My name is Sydney. I am 11 years old, and last summer my father went on a month-long trip with his friends and left me with a single crumpled $20 bill in my hand. You are independent now, he said with a cold smile that never reached his eyes, hauling his expensive luggage toward the door. You are not a baby anymore. Just order food if you need to. Independent. That was his word, not mine. I stared at the bill in my palm. $20. Not a plan, not a babysitter, not even a real goodbye. Just a dismissive pat on my shoulder, the sound of wheels rolling down the driveway, and the front door slamming shut behind him. My mother would have never done this. But my mother was not here anymore. She had been gone for 2 years now, and in those 2 years, my father had grown colder, more distant, as if losing her had frozen something inside him that could never thaw. He blamed me sometimes, I think. Not with words, but with looks, with silence, with moments like this one, where he could walk away without a second glance. "I will be fine," I said out loud to an empty hallway, as if saying it could make it true. But my hands were shaking. There was no one else in the house, no one who could cook, no one who even knew I had been left here alone. My grandmother lived 3 states away and barely remembered my name anymore. My father's friends were just drinking buddies who would not notice if I vanished. I tried to pretend this was some kind of challenge I could win. Day 1, I told myself. I will prove that I can handle this. I lined up the few cans in the pantry, checked the fridge that was already half empty, and shoved my fear down as far as it would go. If my father thought I was independent, then maybe he should see what that really looked like. Because as that month ticked forward, the $20 in my hand would disappear, the food would run out, and the silence in our house would turn into something darker than loneliness. And when they finally came, what my father saw inside our home made him whisper, No, this cannot be happening. Do you want to know how being left with $20 at 11 turned into the one decision that made my father regret everything he had done to me? Stay to the end and you will see exactly how I made sure he would never forget it. The first problem hit me about 10 minutes after his car pulled away. My father had tossed a shiny emergency credit card on the counter, like that would fix everything. There was just one catch. It was not activated, and I did not know the PIN. I found that out the hard way. Standing at the doorway with my phone in my hand, trying to order food and watching every app reject the card over and over. So it was just me, a dead card, and $20. Day 1, I made it a game. I sliced bread as thin as I could, spread peanut butter so carefully it barely covered the surface, and told myself real survivors made things stretch. I even joked in my head that this would make a good story someday, the kind my mother used to tell me about her own childhood, stories where she made something out of nothing. But my mother was not here to tell me I was doing well. She was not here to fix this. By day 3, it stopped being funny. The pantry looked like a before picture in a commercial about hunger. A couple of cans I did not know how to open without cutting myself. A box of cereal with more air than food and a jar of pickles I hated. My stomach growled loud enough to embarrass me even though no one else was there. I tried to distract myself. I turned the TV on and let random shows play, noise filling the room so I did not have to hear the house creak. I opened my father's laptop and stared at his messages with his friends, jokes about drinks and beaches, photos of them grinning like they did not have a care in the world. Not one message asking if I was okay. At one point, I grabbed my notebook, the one my mother had given me for writing stories, and wrote in big letters at the top of a page, "Evidence." Under it, I scribbled, "Left alone at 11, $20, no food plan, no check-ins." I did not know exactly what I would do with that, but writing it down made something inside me shift. If they thought I was old enough to be alone, then I was old enough to remember everything, to record everything, to show someone someday how my father chose a vacation with his friends over me. I picked up my phone and opened a video app. Day 3, I said quietly to the camera. My face looked smaller than I expected, paler, with dark circles under my eyes I had not noticed before. I am still alone. The card does not work. I ate the last decent thing in the fridge yesterday. I paused, swallowing hard. If you are seeing this, it means someone finally asked what happened to me. I saved the clip and locked my phone, heart hammering. Part of me hoped nobody would ever see it. Another part of me wanted that video to explode in my father's face when he came home. I thought about my best friend, Emma, and hovered over her name. If I texted her, I would have to admit that my father had left me, that I was hungry, that I was not okay. Instead, I sent a message that sounded normal. "How was your trip?" No reply. Maybe she was somewhere by a lake, eating burgers with her family, not even checking her phone. My stomach twisted with something deeper than hunger. By day 5, the hunger felt like a fog around my brain. I started getting dizzy when I stood up too fast. I found a half-empty box of cereal in the back of the cupboard and ate it dry from the bag, trying to make every handful last. I opened my notebook again and added another line. Day 5. Still no call from Father, not even a text. Then another line. If I disappear, this will prove it was not my fault. That was the moment my thinking changed. This was not just about surviving until he came back. This was about what would happen to him when people finally realized what he had done. My mother would have been horrified if she could see this. She would have wrapped me in her arms, made soup, asked me 1,000 questions about how I was feeling. But she was gone, and he was the one who remained, and he had chosen to leave me like this. On day 7, my body felt weak, but my anger was stronger. I shuffled to the front window and peered out at the street. Kids were riding bikes. A dog barked at a delivery truck. A couple walked by holding coffee cups. Normal lives, normal parents. I looked at our empty driveway and whispered, "You chose your friends over me. Do you know what that is going to cost you when someone finds out?" As if the universe was listening, the doorbell rang. I froze, cereal crumbs still on my fingers. No one ever rang our doorbell. Not really. Neighbor kids just knocked. Packages got dropped. The bell rang again, followed by 3 sharp knocks. My heart pounded as I moved toward the door. For a second, I thought about pretending I was not home. If it was someone selling something, they would go away. But another thought cut through my fear. What if this is it? What if this is the moment someone finally sees me? Hand shaking, I reached for the handle. If you were 11, starving and completely alone, would you open that door or would you keep pretending everything was fine? I cracked the door open just enough to see who was there. Standing on the porch was a man in a green jacket with my school's emblem stitched on the chest. It took me a second to place him without the classroom behind him. "Hi, Sydney," he said gently. It was Mr. Hughes, the counselor from school. "I have been trying to reach your parents. They did not pick up. Can I come in for a moment?" My first instinct was to lie, to say everything was fine, that my father was just out, that I did not need anything. But my hand loosened on the door, and I stepped back. "Sure," I murmured. "I guess." He stepped inside and looked around. The silence in the house suddenly felt heavier. The dishes in the sink, the empty counter, the nearly bare fruit bowl, all became evidence I had not meant to stage, but had accidentally left out. "Are your parents at work?" he asked, scanning the room, clearly expecting someone to appear. "My father is away," I said, surprising myself with how flat my voice sounded. "With friends. For a month." His eyebrows shot up. "A month? And who is staying with you?" I swallowed. This was the line. The moment I could choose to protect him or tell the truth. My fingers curled tighter around the edge of my shirt. "Just me," I admitted. He said I was old enough. Something in his face changed like a switch flipping. The polite concern turned into something sharper, more serious. He pulled out a chair and sat down at the table, motioning for me to sit across from him. "Sydney, how long have you been alone?" "A week," I whispered. "Almost. Do you have enough food, money?" I let out a small, bitter laugh I did not recognize. He left me a credit card that does not work and $20. He stared at me for a long moment. It was not the way teachers stare when you forget your homework. It was something heavier, like he was trying to count all the ways this was wrong. "This is not okay," he said finally, his voice low. "You know that, right?" I shrugged even though my chest ached. He said I should be able to handle it, that I need to grow up, that my mother spoiled me too much when she was alive, and now I need to learn to be tougher. The mention of my mother hung in the air between us. Mr. Hughes's expression softened with something that looked like understanding mixed with sadness. "And how have you been handling it?" I wanted to say fine. I wanted to keep pretending, but the notebook on the table caught my eye. The word evidence stared back at me in my own handwriting. "I have been hungry," I said instead, "and scared. And I have been writing things down, just in case." "Just in case what?" he asked. "Just in case something happens to me," I replied quietly. "So nobody can say they did not know. So nobody can say I was making it up or being dramatic like he always tells me I am." Silence filled the space between us. For a moment, I hated the silence, but then I realized he was not ignoring it. He was feeling it, really feeling it. He leaned forward. "Sydney, leaving an 11-year-old alone for a week, for a month, with almost no food and no supervision is not just irresponsible. It is dangerous. It is neglect. There are laws about this." My heart thudded in my ears. Neglect. Laws. Words that sounded like they belonged in TV dramas, not in my kitchen. "What happens if someone finds out?" I asked, my voice suddenly small. "Agencies get involved," he said carefully. "Child Protective Services. There could be an investigation. Your father could face serious consequences." There it was. The thing I had not dared to say out loud. The thing that made my anger twist into something sharper. "Consequences," I repeated slowly, "for what he did to me." He did not rush to comfort me or tell me I was overreacting. Instead, he nodded. "For what he did to you." My mind raced. I imagined my father's face when he came home to find strangers in our living room. People asking questions he could not dodge with dismissive comments about independence and toughness. I pictured him seeing my notebook, my video clips, my empty pantry. "Do you want help, Sydney?" Mr. Hughes asked quietly. Real help, not just groceries. The kind of help that makes sure this never happens again. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no, to slam the door on all of this and just wait for my father to come back and pretend this month never happened. Another part of me, the part that had been writing the word evidence, was tired of pretending. "Yes," I said finally. "But if I say yes, what does that mean for him?" "It means he will have to answer for his choices," he said. "It means adults will finally see what you have been going through." I looked down at my hands, then back at him. "Then help me," I said. "I want him to see exactly what he did. I want him to feel what it is like to lose control." He nodded once, firmly. "First, we make sure you are safe. Then we make sure the right people hear your story." As he reached for his phone, a strange calm settled over me. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something new. A quiet, steady determination. I was not just a kid waiting to be rescued anymore. I was the witness. If you were in my place, would you keep protecting your father, or would you finally let the truth become the weapon he never saw coming? Mr. Hughes stepped into the hallway to make a call, leaving me at the table with my notebook open. I could hear fragments of his voice, low and controlled, but the words that floated back to me were enough to make my pulse race. Alone, 11, no guardian, no food in the house, father away on personal trip with friends. I traced the ink on the page with my fingertip. Evidence. Suddenly, it did not feel like a secret diary anymore. It felt like a case file. My mother had taught me to write everything down, to keep track of important things. She used to say that words had power, that stories could change the world. I wondered if she had known, somehow, that I would need this lesson. A few minutes later, he came back. "I called your neighbor, Mrs. Johnson," he said, "and I also spoke with someone from the Child Protection Hotline. They are going to send someone to check on you, but first, we need to get you something to eat." My cheeks burned at the idea of people checking on me like I was some broken machine, but I also felt something else, a small flare of satisfaction. If they were checking on me, that meant they were also checking on my father. "Is Mrs. Johnson mad?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, she is worried. That is what good neighbors do." A knock sounded at the door, softer than his earlier one. Mrs. Johnson stepped inside, her eyes scanning me from head to toe, landing on the notebook, the empty cereal box on the counter, the pale look on my face. "Oh, Sydney," she breathed. "Why did you not come to me sooner?" "Because I did not want to look weak," I blurted out. "My father always tells me I need to be tougher, that I rely on people too much, that my mother made me soft. I thought asking for help meant I was proving him right." Her expression softened. Asking for help is not weakness, it is survival. And sometimes it is the only way to make adults face what they do. That last sentence hit me like a bell. Make adults face what they do. We all sat down together, and for the first time, I did not feel like a kid being talked over. They asked me to tell them everything, and I did. I told them about the expensive luggage rolling out the front door, the $20, the card that did not work, the way my father had looked at me with those cold eyes when I asked who would be staying with me. "You will be fine. You need to learn independence," he had said like it was a life lesson instead of abandonment. I told them about the nights I cried myself to sleep, not just from hunger, but from the crushing loneliness. How I would walk past my mother's empty room and wish she was still here, because she would have never let this happen. How my father had become a different person after she died, someone harder, someone who looked at me like I was a burden he had not signed up for. As I talked, Mrs. Johnson's jaw clenched. Mr. Hughes scribbled notes on a pad he had pulled from his bag. "Can we show them this?" I asked, pointing to my notebook. "When they come, the people from the hotline." "Yes," he said. "In fact, I want you to keep writing what you felt, what you ate, when you tried to call him, everything you remember. So he cannot twist it later," I murmured. "So he cannot say I am exaggerating or being dramatic like he always does." "Exactly," he replied. "You are allowed to protect yourself with the truth." The phrase made my chest tighten. Protect myself with the truth. That sounded a lot like revenge, and I realized I did not hate that. Later, when the caseworker arrived, she introduced herself as Ms. Lopez and asked to look around the house. I watched her eyes linger on the nearly empty fridge, the trash can with only a few wrappers, the unused emergency credit card on the counter. She did not have to say anything. Her expression said it all. "How long has your father been gone?" she asked gently. 7 days, I answered. "He planned a month. And who checks on you?" "No one, until today." "Does he call?" "Not since he left," I said. "He sent one text from the airport saying to behave myself. That was it." The caseworker nodded slowly, then turned to Mr. Hughes and Mrs. Johnson. "Thank you for contacting us," she said. "This is exactly the kind of situation we need to know about." As they talked, I slipped away for a second and set up my phone on the counter, opening the video app again. I recorded a quiet clip of the empty fridge, the lonely table, the caseworker's bag resting on the chair. "This is what our house looked like when they finally noticed I was alone," I said into the camera. "This is what my father will walk into when he comes back. This is what he left behind when he chose his friends over his daughter." When I was done, I tucked my phone into my pocket, the recording safely saved. I was not just surviving anymore. I was documenting. I was building a case that could not be ignored or dismissed. The caseworker came back to me. "For now, you will not be alone again," she said. "We are arranging for you to stay with Mrs. Johnson while we speak to your father and figure out the next steps." I glanced at my neighbor. She smiled softly and squeezed my shoulder. "Is that okay with you, Sydney?" the caseworker asked. I thought about my empty house, the long, quiet nights, the way my father's last message had been a command instead of concern. Then I thought about something else. What it would do to him when he came home and found not just a lonely kid, but an official report waiting for him. Yes, I said. I want to stay somewhere I am not invisible, somewhere I am not just an inconvenience. That night, as I packed a small bag of clothes and my notebook, I looked around my room one more time. The posters on my wall, the photo of my mother on my nightstand, the window that faced the street. I picked up the photo and held it close. "I am sorry, Mom," I whispered. "I am sorry he is not the person you thought he was. I am sorry I could not make him care." I packed the photo carefully between my clothes. "This was the place you left," I whispered under my breath, imagining my father hearing it later. "But it is not the place you will find when you come back. If you were me, would you choose to forgive and forget? Or would you let every empty shelf and unanswered message become proof that could change everything?" Moving next door should have felt like nothing, just a few steps across a patch of grass. But carrying my small bag and my notebook into Mrs. Johnson's house felt like crossing a line I could never uncross. I was not just the kid in the middle anymore. I was the kid someone had chosen to protect. Her house smelled like laundry and vanilla. The table was set with placemats and her fridge was full of actual food, not just forgotten leftovers clinging to the corners of shelves. My stomach growled before I could stop it. "We will fix that first," she said, pretending not to notice my embarrassment. "Come on, let us cook together." We walked back to my kitchen with reusable bags. This time, she did not just grab food at random. She let me choose. Pasta, sauce, vegetables, bread, fruit. Things that would last. Things that made the kitchen look like someone actually lived there. "Keep the receipts," Mr. Hughes said quietly as we unloaded the bags. "They show what was not here before today." So we put the receipts in my notebook behind the pages where I had written about my hunger. Evidence, layer by layer. As we cooked, the sound of boiling water and sizzling garlic wrapped around me like something I had missed without knowing it. My mother used to cook like this. She would hum while she stirred, ask me about my day, let me taste the sauce from a wooden spoon. My father never cooked. After she died, it was takeout or microwave meals, and eventually just whatever I could figure out myself. "Have you ever made spaghetti from scratch like this?" Mrs. Johnson asked. "Not really," I admitted. "My mother used to, but after she passed, my father mostly orders takeout or tells me to figure it out myself." "Then today you learn," she said with a smile. "You learn how to feed yourself properly. Nobody can take that away from you." I stirred the sauce, watching the red swirl around the pan. It felt symbolic somehow, like all the anger and hurt inside me was finally going somewhere, turning into something I could use. While we waited for the pasta, the caseworker came back with more questions. She asked for my father's messages, the time of his flight, the last time he called. I showed her the one text from the airport that just said, "Behave yourself. Do not cause problems. No questions about how you were doing?" she asked, reading the message. "Never," I said. "He does not really do questions. He does commands." She wrote something down. I did not ask what. I did not need to. "Do you want to say anything directly to your father?" she asked. "We sometimes include statements from kids in our reports." For a second, my throat closed up. Then I felt my notebook pressing against my arm where I held it, and my answer came out clear. "Yes," I said. "I want him to know exactly what this felt like." We sat at the table and I wrote while the spaghetti cooked. "You said I was mature enough to be alone," I wrote. "But being mature does not mean I do not need food. It does not mean I do not get scared. You told everyone how independent I should be, but you did not notice when your own daughter was counting crumbs." I stopped, took a breath, and kept going. "You have been different since Mom died. Colder, harder. Like losing her gave you permission to stop caring about me, too. You look at me sometimes like I am something broken that reminds you of her, something you wish you could put away." My hand trembled, but I kept writing. By the time you read this, other adults will have already seen what you did. They will have seen the empty fridge, the dead card, the notebook where I had to record my own neglect. If there are consequences, they are not because I betrayed you. They are because you left me. When I finished, I slid the paper toward the caseworker. Can you make sure he sees this? I can, she said, and I will. Later that evening, I sat at Mrs. Johnson's table, twirling spaghetti around my fork. The first bite almost made me cry. It was warm and real and tasted like something I had not felt in a long time. Safety. My mother's cooking had tasted like this, like home. This is what normal is supposed to feel like, I thought. Not sitting alone on the floor eating dry cereal out of a box while trying not to think about how many days until the food runs out completely. Mr. Hughes stayed for dinner, and we talked about school, books, and even silly things like the worst cafeteria lunches we had ever had. For an hour, I almost forgot that my life was technically falling apart in the house next door. But when the plates were cleared and the grown-ups started talking quietly in the living room, I heard pieces of their conversation. Words like temporary placement, investigation, and possible removal of custody. I did not fully understand every legal term, but I understood the feeling underneath them. My father had treated my presence like a burden he needed a vacation from. Now there was a real chance he could lose the right to call himself my guardian at all. Back in the guest room where I would sleep, I set my phone up one more time and hit record. Day 7, I said softly into the camera. But it is different now. I am not in my house. I am somewhere safe. People know. They saw the truth. I looked straight at my own reflection in the screen. If you are my father watching this, I want you to remember something, I continued. You always said actions have consequences, that if I messed up, I would have to face them. You said Mom made me soft and that life would teach me to be harder. This time, it is your turn. This is not just my story, it is your choice, written in real time. I stopped the recording and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. My heart was not light. It hurt. I still missed the idea of a parent who would have stayed, who would have seen me as something more than an obligation. But I also knew something else now. I was not powerless. I had my voice. I had my evidence. I had adults who finally believed me. Maybe one act of truth really could change everything. But would it be enough to make him see what he had done? Or would it simply give me the strength to walk away from him for good when the time came? The days at Mrs. Johnson's house felt unreal at first, like I had stepped into someone else's family by accident. I woke up to the smell of breakfast instead of the sound of my own stomach growling. There was always someone asking how I slept, not just assuming I was fine or telling me to stop complaining. For the first time in a long time, I did not have to prove I was independent every second just to be tolerated. But even with the warmth, there was a countdown ticking in the background. Every adult around me knew it. I knew it too. At some point, my father would have to come back. At some point, he would have to walk into everything he left behind. On the second night, my phone buzzed while I was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. A number I recognized flashed on the screen. My father's phone. I stared at it until the screen started to dim. "Aren't you going to answer?" Mrs. Johnson asked gently. My fingers trembled. What if he is just calling to yell at me for ruining his trip? "Then you will know exactly where you stand," she said calmly, "but you do not have to talk to him alone." I hit accept and put the phone on speaker. "Sydney," his voice snapped through the line, sharp and cold. "What is going on? Why is there some woman from Child Services emailing me about an investigation? Why is your school involved? Do you have any idea what this looks like?" There it was. No, "Are you okay?" No, "Are you safe?" Just what this looks like. I swallowed. "They are involved because you left me," I said. My voice shook, but I got the words out. "You went away for a month with your friends. You left me alone with $20 and a credit card that did not work. They saw the house. They saw the fridge. They saw everything. You are exaggerating, he shot back instantly. There was plenty of food. You know how dramatic you can be, just like your mother. And you are 11, not a toddler. I cannot believe you would turn people against me like this. Do you understand what you are doing to my reputation, to my standing in the community? Across the table, I saw Mrs. Johnson's jaw tighten. She leaned closer so her voice would carry. This is Mrs. Johnson. I am the neighbor, she said firmly. I am also the one who bought your daughter groceries because there was almost nothing left. This is not about reputation. It is about safety. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. Why are you interfering? This is a family matter. Sydney is fine. She just needs to stop being so sensitive. I glanced at the notebook next to me, open to a page where I had written no call for 7 days. No check-ins. No concern. No, I said quietly, cutting in before anyone else could. I was not fine. I am not fine with what you did. I am not fine with being left alone to prove some point about toughness. There was a pause, and for a split second, I thought maybe he would finally hear me. Maybe something in him would crack and he would realize what he had done. Then he spoke again, each word shoved through clenched teeth. We will talk about this when I get back, and we are going to have a serious conversation about consequences, young lady, about respect, about what happens when you embarrass your family. The line went dead. Mrs. Johnson reached over and silenced the phone before it could buzz again. He is right about one thing, she said softly. There will be consequences, but not just for you. The next day, the caseworker came to the school and pulled me out of class. We sat in a small office that smelled like dry erase markers and old coffee while she scrolled through something on her tablet. Your father has moved his flight up, she told me. He will be home in 3 days instead of 3 weeks. My heart flipped. Part of me was relieved he was not staying gone for the full month. Another part of me recognized the reason. He was not coming back for me. He was coming back to protect himself, to control the narrative, to make sure I did not damage him any further. What happens when he gets here? I asked. We will meet him at the house, she said. I will be there along with a supervisor from the department. Mr. Hughes has agreed to attend as a school representative. We want you to be part of the conversation if you feel safe. I thought about hiding at Mrs. Johnson's house and letting the adults handle it. I thought about slipping into my room and pretending I was asleep when he walked in. Both options felt like going back to being invisible, like going back to being the problem child who needed to toughen up. No, I said slowly. I want to be there. I want him to see me. I want him to see what he came home to. The caseworker nodded. Then we will make sure you have a voice in that room. For the next 2 days, we prepared without calling it preparation. We did not rehearse lines like in a school play, but we organized facts. The caseworker printed copies of my statement, the notes from my notebook she had permission to use, the receipts from the groceries, screenshots of my father's social media posts from his trip, showing him laughing with friends at restaurants and bars, the call logs that showed how many times he had not checked in. This is not about punishing him for the sake of it, she reminded me. This is about making sure you are safe. Whatever happens comes from his choices, not your existence. I understood what she meant, but another part of me, the part that remembered eating dry cereal in the dark while he posted photos of himself having the time of his life, could not pretend this did not feel like something else, too. It felt like justice. It felt like holding up a mirror and forcing him to look at what he had done. It felt like my mother's voice in my head saying, "Stand up for yourself, sweetheart. Do not let anyone make you small." On the morning of his return, we went back into my house for the first time in days. It still smelled faintly like stale air and dust. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to walk through each room. This was my scene. I could not look away. The caseworker placed a thick folder on the kitchen table. Beside it, we put my notebook open to the first page that said, Evidence. My phone sat next to it, turned on and ready. The first video I had recorded, the one where I said, "Day 3, I am still alone," was paused on the screen. The image of my own tired face stared back at me. "Are you sure you want this playing when he arrives?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "He always tells me stories do not matter unless there is proof. This is my proof." Mrs. Johnson stood by the doorway, arms crossed but eyes kind. Mr. Hughes leaned against the counter, his school badge clipped neatly to his shirt, watching everything with quiet focus. The supervisor from the department sat at the table, flipping through the file one more time. We heard the car before we saw it. Tires on the driveway, an engine cutting off, a single door slamming. No laughter this time, just heavy footsteps approaching. For a moment, my legs felt like rubber. The caseworker stepped closer to me. "Remember, you do not have to protect him from the truth anymore," she said. "If he tries to make you feel guilty, you can look at me or at Mrs. Johnson or at Mr. Hughes. You are not alone in this room." I nodded, taking a steadying breath. My mother's photo was still in my bag upstairs. I wished she could be here, but maybe in some way she was. Maybe this strength I felt was something she had left behind in me. The front door handle turned. The lock clicked. This was it. The moment everything split into before and after. If you were standing where I was, would you run to hug him and pretend nothing happened? Or would you hold your ground and let him finally face what he had done? The door swung open and my father walked in, dragging his expensive luggage behind him. He was still wearing the casual clothes from his trip, sunglasses pushed up on his head, looking tan and rested like someone who had just enjoyed the best few weeks of his life. He stopped when he saw us. The easy expression on his face froze, then twisted into something darker. His eyes jumped from the stranger at the table to Mr. Hughes by the counter, to Mrs. Johnson near the door, and finally to me, standing next to the open notebook and glowing phone. "What is this?" he demanded, dropping his suitcase. "What are all of you doing in my house?" The supervisor rose calmly. "Mr. Carter, my name is Ms. Lopez from Child Protective Services. Please have a seat. We need to discuss the situation regarding your daughter, Sydney." My father did not sit. He stared at me instead, his eyes hard and cold in that way I had learned to recognize. That look that said I had disappointed him again, that I had failed some test I did not know I was taking. "Sydney, what did you tell them?" His voice was low, dangerous. For a second, the old instinct kicked in, the one that made me want to shrink, apologize, twist the story to make him less angry. But the video on the phone caught my eye, that smaller, tired version of me on day 3. I lifted my chin. "I told them what happened," I said. "I told them the truth." My father tried to smooth things over. He set his bag down and forced a dismissive laugh, the kind he used when he thought someone was being ridiculous. "There has clearly been a misunderstanding," he said. "I left her with food, with money, with a credit card. She is a very mature 11-year-old. She knows how to take care of herself. Her mother coddled her too much, but I am teaching her real independence. Kids these days are more capable than people think." The supervisor placed a printed sheet on the table and turned it toward him. "This is the activation record for your card," she said. "It was never set up with a PIN. It was declined multiple times when Sydney tried to use it." She tapped another page. "These are photos taken of your refrigerator and pantry 1 week into your trip. The amount of food was not sufficient for an unsupervised minor, and several items had already expired." My father finally sat, more from shock than cooperation. "Expired food does not mean she was starving," he snapped. "She knows how to order delivery. I was only gone a week so far. She has my number if there was an emergency." The supervisor slid another paper forward. "These are your call and message logs. One text from the airport telling her to behave herself. No direct check-ins, no calls asking if she had eaten, if she was safe, if she needed anything. Meanwhile, your social media shows you posting daily from bars and restaurants with friends." My father's face went pale. He glanced at the logs, then at me. "I told you to figure things out, Sydney. That is what adults do. We trusted you to handle yourself. You trusted me to survive, I said quietly. You did not trust yourself to be a parent. You have not trusted yourself to be a parent since Mom died. Mrs. Johnson stepped forward, unable to hold back. She was dizzy from hunger when we found her, she said, her voice shaking with controlled anger. She told me she did not come to me sooner because she thought needing help meant she was weak. Do you have any idea what kind of lesson that is for a child? What kind of fear you put into her? My father looked between us, his jaw clenching. This is getting blown way out of proportion. She is being dramatic, like always. She gets that from her mother. The supervisor nodded once at me, then at my phone. Sydney, are you comfortable showing him what you recorded? My hands shook slightly as I reached for the phone. I tapped play. The room filled with my own small voice from days earlier. Day 3, the past me said on screen. I am still alone. The card does not work. I ate the last decent thing in the fridge yesterday. If you are seeing this, it means someone finally asked what happened to me. The camera panned across our kitchen, catching the nearly empty shelves, the lonely box of cereal, the silent room that felt more like a prison than a home. My father stared at the screen, his face draining of color. No, he whispered. But it was not the horrified whisper of someone who cared. It was the whisper of someone realizing he had been caught. The supervisor folded her hands. Mr. Carter, based on our investigation, school reports, neighbor testimony, and Sydney's own documentation, we have determined that leaving her unsupervised under these conditions qualifies as neglect under state law. Effective immediately, there will be an emergency order in place. Sydney will not be returning to unsupervised care with you until a full hearing is conducted. My father shook his head, standing up abruptly. You cannot take my child from me over a misunderstanding. I just needed some time away. Do you know what kind of stress I have been under since my wife died? I work constantly to provide for her. I deserve a break. I took a breath and stepped forward. I know, I said. You tell everyone how hard you work. You tell your friends, your colleagues. But when I was alone, hungry and scared, you did not tell anyone about that. You did not tell anyone where I was. You just posted photos of yourself having fun. His eyes filled with something that was not quite tears, more like frustration. Sydney, you do not understand. Adults need time away. I thought you would be fine. Your mother made you too dependent. I was trying to teach you a lesson. The words I had heard my whole life, especially after my mother died, echoed in my head. Every time I cried, every time I needed something, he would say them with cold finality. Actions have consequences, Sydney. Life is hard. Toughen up. So I said them back. You always told me that actions have consequences, I said, my voice steady. You taught me that if I made a choice, I had to live with what came next. You said Mom made me soft and that the world would teach me to be harder. This is what you taught me. This is what your choice looks like. The room went quiet. My father looked like the ground had vanished beneath him, like for the first time he was seeing the reflection of what he had become. The supervisor spoke again. You will have the opportunity to participate in parenting classes, psychological evaluations, and supervised visits if the court approves, she said. This is not about punishing you forever. It is about ensuring that Sydney is safe and that this never happens again. My father turned back to me, his expression shifting between anger and something that might have been panic. Sydney, please, he said, and his voice cracked slightly. Tell them you want to come home. Tell them we can fix this. I will do better. I will be more present. I wanted to believe him. A part of me, the part that still remembered him before my mother died, when he used to smile and play games with me, wanted to rewind everything. But another part of me, the part that had spent nights recording videos in the dark, knew that going back without real change would mean saying none of it mattered. I want to be safe, I said. I want to be somewhere I am seen before I disappear. Right now, that is not with you." His face crumpled like paper, but there was still anger underneath it. "After everything I have done for you," he said quietly, "after I kept this house, kept you fed and clothed after your mother left us." "She did not leave us," I said, my voice breaking. "She died, and you act like I died with her." The supervisor placed a form on the table. "For the duration of the investigation, Sydney will remain in temporary placement with Mrs. Johnson," she said. "You will be notified of the court date. Until then, you are not to contact her directly without going through our office. You are taking her side over her own father," he said, his voice hardening again. "You are turning my daughter against me." "No," I said softly. "You did that yourself." The caseworker pulled out the statement I had written, the one with my own words about what the week had felt like. She placed it on the table in front of him. "Sydney wrote this for you," she said. "You should read it." He stared at the paper like it might burn him. Then slowly, reluctantly, he picked it up. I watched his eyes move across the lines, saw his jaw clench tighter and tighter. When he finished, he put it down carefully, his hands shaking. His voice came out flat. "You really think I am that terrible?" It was not a question. "I think you forgot I was your daughter," I replied. "I think losing Mom made you forget how to love anything." We left the house before he did. As I stepped out onto the porch, I heard something crash inside. Maybe a chair kicked over, maybe his fist against the wall. My father trying to destroy something because he could not destroy the truth. Walking back across the grass to Mrs. Johnson's house, I felt both heavy and strangely light. I had not ruined my family. He had done that himself when he chose a vacation with his friends over a daughter who still counted on him to come home every night. All I had done was refuse to hide it, refuse to pretend that being tough meant being alone, refuse to let his version of my story be the only one that mattered. Weeks later at the hearing, I sat in a room that smelled like paper and old carpet, while lawyers talked about risk factors and protective environments. My father looked smaller than I remembered, sitting at his table, listening as people described his choices like evidence in a case. My videos were entered into the record. My notebook pages were scanned. My own voice on the stand did not shake as much as I thought it would. The judge, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, asked me directly how I felt about returning home. I took a breath and told her the truth, that I missed the idea of a father who cared, that I wished my mother was still alive because she would have never let this happen, that I did not feel safe going back unless something real changed, not just promises. In the end, the judge ordered supervised visits and mandatory counseling for him. Full custody stayed out of his reach for now. He did not go to jail. It was not some dramatic movie moment, but something more real and in a way sharper. He lost the automatic right to be in my life without someone watching. He lost the assumption that he was doing his best. He lost the ability to hide behind words like independence and toughness when what he really meant was abandonment. That summer, I learned how to cook more than spaghetti. Mrs. Johnson taught me recipes my mother used to make, and sometimes I would cry while stirring the pot, not from sadness, but from the memory of feeling loved. I learned that help was not weakness, and that telling the truth could be the strongest kind of power there is. Not yelling, not breaking things, but simply refusing to let what happened stay invisible. My father still sends messages sometimes, long texts about how much he has changed, how the counseling has helped him see things differently, how sorry he is, how much he misses me. Some of them sound genuine. Others still have that edge of blame, like if I had just been stronger, tougher, more like he wanted me to be, none of this would have happened. Maybe someday we will find a version of normal that does not erase what happened. Maybe someday he will truly understand that my mother's death was not permission to stop being a parent. Maybe we will not. But I know this. The day he came home from his trip expecting to find everything exactly as he left it, he walked into something he never saw coming. A daughter who had turned every empty shelf, every unanswered text, every hungry night into proof. A room full of adults who finally listened. A truth he could not dismiss with lectures about toughness. And when he whispered, "No, this cannot be happening," I realized something important. It already had. It had been happening from the moment he chose his friends over me, from the moment he looked at me and saw a burden instead of a child, from the moment he decided that teaching me to be independent meant leaving me to drown. I visit my mother's grave sometimes now. I tell her about school, about the recipes I learned, about how I finally stood up for myself the way she always encouraged me to. I tell her that I wish she was here, but that I am learning to be okay without her, that I am learning the difference between being strong and being abandoned. I think she would be proud, not because I hurt my father, but because I refused to disappear, because I used my voice when silence would have been easier, because I chose truth over protection, even when it was terrifying. So tell me, if you were 11 and left alone with $20 while your father chased his freedom, would you bury the story to keep his image clean? Would you convince yourself that toughness means suffering in silence? Or would you do what I did and let the truth be the justice they never expected? Because sometimes the bravest thing a child can do is refuse to make themselves smaller to fit someone else's idea of strength. Sometimes survival means speaking up. Sometimes love means demanding better. And sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stop saving them from the consequences of their choices.